"You owe this family," my mother said, sliding the folder across the conference table. "Sign the company over to your brother." I looked at the folder, then at her hand still resting on it, manicured nails pressed against my company logo like she had any right to touch it. Behind her, my father stood near the glass wall, silent and stiff, watching my employees move through the head office I built after they threw me out. "You fired me," I said, "the same day I finished training Caleb." My mother's mouth tightened. "We gave you experience. You gave Caleb my job. And now," she said, leaning forward, "you're going to give him what should have been his from the beginning." Before I could answer, the elevator doors opened. Caleb stepped out. He saw our parents, he saw the folder, then he saw the signature at the bottom of the demand letter. And his face went dark. 3 years earlier, I had left Voss Strategic Supply with one cardboard box, no severance, and every employee pretending not to watch as security walked me out. Now Elaine and Richard Voss were sitting inside my head office like they still owned me. My mother adjusted the pearls at her throat and looked around the glass conference room. "Impressive space, very polished. I suppose your father's reputation opened more doors than you admit. My clients signed with me because I solved problems your company stopped being able to solve." My father finally spoke. "Careful, Maya." It was the same warning he used when I was 22 and working weekends. The same warning from every late-night payroll crisis, every supplier call, every time I asked why Caleb got praised for arriving at meetings I prepared. Outside the conference room, 2 analysts slowed near the glass. They recognized my parents from old industry articles, the ones that called them a legacy family and called me their rising star until I became inconvenient. Elaine tapped the folder. "Caleb will be here any minute. We can handle this privately, or we can let everyone learn how this company was really built." I opened the folder just enough to see the first page. A demand letter. A transfer agreement. Caleb's name. Caleb's signature. But the pressure marks were wrong. The ink looked smooth, yet the paper beneath it was uneven, like someone had copied the shape from another document and pressed too hard. My mother watched my eyes land on it. Then Caleb walked in. He didn't look victorious. He looked betrayed. Caleb didn't look at our parents first. He looked at me. Then the folder. Then my mother. "What did you do?" he asked. Elaine's head turned slowly, the way it used to when I was younger and had said something at dinner that made the room go still. "Sit down, Caleb." He didn't move. My father's jaw tightened. "Your mother gave you an instruction." Caleb's eyes stayed on the page in front of me. "That's my signature." Elaine gave a small, polished laugh. "Of course it is. Don't start acting confused because your sister is making this uncomfortable." I watched Caleb's face carefully. For 3 years, I had imagined this moment differently. I imagined him walking into my office with that same easy smile, ready to collect another thing he hadn't earned. I imagined him thanking our parents while I stood there being told again that my work only mattered when someone else could inherit it. But he wasn't smiling. His hands were clenched at his sides. I remembered those hands holding a clipboard 3 years ago, while I trained him in the warehouse office at Voss Strategic Supply. "Inventory turnover reports are due every Friday," I had told him, tapping the screen. "If you miss this, purchasing overorders, storage costs spike, and finance blames operations." Caleb had leaned back in the chair and spun a pen between his fingers. "You make everything sound like a disaster. Because when no one checks the numbers, it becomes one." He had grinned. "That's why you're here." And our mother, standing in the doorway, had said, "Exactly. Maya knows how to do the difficult parts. Caleb knows how to make people comfortable." I should have heard the warning in that sentence. For 2 years, I rebuilt their company while they called it helping out. I negotiated supplier extensions when the accounts were overdue. I won back clients after missed shipments. I covered payroll gaps with personal savings once because my father said the bank delay was temporary and my mother said family didn't keep score. Caleb came in late, left early, and got applause for remembering a vendor's name. I stayed until midnight and got told my tone was cold. Then, the day he finished the training checklist, my mother called me into the executive office. Caleb wasn't there. My father was by the window, refusing to look at me. Elaine sat behind the desk I had used every day and folded her hands. Maya, she said, you've become difficult to manage. I thought she was joking. I just closed the Northline renewal. And you made everyone miserable doing it. My father cleared his throat. The business needs a warmer face. I looked from him to her. What does that mean? It means Caleb will be stepping into your role, Elaine said, effective immediately. My mouth went dry. I trained him to support operations. You trained him because the company needed continuity. Does Caleb know? Elaine's eyes sharpened. He understands family duty better than you do. That was the last sentence she said before security appeared in the hallway. No severance, no transition period, no thank you. Just a cardboard box and 27 people pretending their screens were fascinating, while I walked past them with my office plant under one arm. Caleb never called that night. Not the next day. Not the next week. So I built the only explanation that fit. He had wanted the chair, and I had been stupid enough to teach him how to sit in it. Now he stood in my conference room, staring at a signature that looked like his, but had drained the color from his face. I never signed that, he said quietly. Elaine moved fast. You're nervous, that's understandable. Your sister always had a way of making people feel small. I almost laughed, but it came out as a breath. Caleb finally turned toward her. Mom, I'm telling you, I never signed this. My father stepped away from the glass wall and walked to the conference room door. What are you doing? I asked. He didn't answer. The lock clicked. That sound changed the room. My employees were still outside. My company was still moving around us. But inside that glass box for 1 second, I was back in the old executive office, realizing my parents had already decided my future before inviting me in. Elaine reached into her leather bag. Maya, she said, voice low and smooth, you have always made things harder than they need to be. She pulled out a second document and placed it on top of the first. This one wasn't just a demand letter. It was a shareholder transfer agreement. And at the bottom, already stamped in blue ink, was my company seal. I grabbed the shareholder agreement before my mother could slide it back. The seal was real. Not a scan, not a cheap copy. The blue stamp sat at the bottom of the page with the exact registration mark my legal team used on board documents and ownership records. My stomach tightened. How did you get this? I asked. Elaine didn't blink. That seal belongs on documents connected to assets you built from this family. No, I said, that seal belongs to my company. My father moved before I could say anything else. He unlocked the conference room door and opened it wide enough for the sound to travel into the executive floor. Then his voice changed. It became louder, calm, public. Maya, no one wants this to get ugly, he said, looking past me toward the employees outside. But you've avoided this family ownership dispute long enough. The office shifted. Conversations died one by one. My operations director looked up from her tablet. 2 account managers stopped beside the printer. Through the glass, I saw Lena, my CFO, step out of her office with a folder tucked under her arm. Elaine pressed a hand to her chest, performing concern like she was in front of a boardroom. We tried to do this privately, she said, her voice soft enough to sound wounded and loud enough to be heard. But Maya has always struggled when asked to face the truth. I felt the trap close. If I snapped, I became unstable. If I stayed quiet, their accusation filled the silence. Caleb looked from our parents to the employees gathering outside the conference room. Why are you doing this here? Richard didn't even look at him, because your sister respects witnesses more than family. Lena reached the doorway. Maya. I held up the stamped agreement. No one leaves this floor with this document. Elaine smiled at Lena like they were old friends. You must be the finance officer. Then you'll want to hear this too. Your founder built this company using Voss strategic supply client lists, confidential pricing histories, and contract templates that never belonged to her. Lena's eyes moved to me, not with doubt but with a question. I gave her one small shake of my head. My mother opened her folder and removed a thin stack of printed emails. These are from the early months of Maya's little startup, Elaine said. Outreach to clients who had active relationships with our company. She placed them on the table one by one, angling them so Lena could see. I recognized the subject lines. I recognized my own writing. But when Elaine turned one page, I saw an attachment listed beneath an email I knew had never carried one. A client export file. My pulse hit once hard. That attachment wasn't on the original email, I said. Elaine's face softened into pity. Maya. No, I wrote that message from my apartment on a folding table after you fired me. I know exactly what was attached. Richard gave a short laugh. You expect everyone to believe you remember every email from 3 years ago. I expect everyone to believe metadata. That made his smile fade. Lena stepped fully into the conference room. I'm calling legal. Elaine looked at her. Before you do, understand that a court injunction can freeze company operations within days. Payroll, contracts, acquisitions, everything your employees depend on. The people outside heard that. I saw it ripple through them. Not panic yet, but calculation. Risk, fear. The company I had built after being discarded was now being threatened in front of the people who trusted me to protect it. Caleb reached for one of the emails. Elaine slapped her hand over it. Don't. He stared at the visible client name at the top of the page. Northline, he said. My father's eyes cut toward him. Caleb looked up slowly. Northline was already leaving before Maya was fired. Careful, Richard said. The room went still. Then he added, quieter but sharp enough for everyone inside the conference room to hear, your future depends on remembering correctly. Caleb's face changed again. Not fear this time. Recognition. Lena turned to me. Do you want security? Elaine gave a small smile. Security won't stop a court order. No, I said, but it can keep forged documents inside this building. My mother's expression flickered. There it was, half a second, too quick for anyone who hadn't spent a lifetime reading her moods to survive them. I turned to Caleb and asked the only question that mattered. Did you send them my company seal? He looked at the stamped agreement, then at our father. No, Caleb said, but I know who did. Richard stepped toward him. That's enough. Caleb didn't move back. His voice dropped. It came from Dad's laptop. For the first time since my parents had walked into my head office, my father looked afraid. Not shocked. Not offended. Afraid. It crossed his face like a shadow and disappeared just as quickly, but I saw it. So did Caleb. Stop talking, Richard said. Caleb reached into his jacket pocket. My father's hand shot up. I said stop. But Caleb had already pulled out his phone. Elaine stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Caleb, this is not the time for one of your emotional reactions. He unlocked the screen without looking at her. That's funny. You always called it emotional when someone remembered the truth. I had never heard him speak to her that way. Lena stepped closer to me, her voice low. Maya, I'm locking document permissions now. Do it, I said. She turned toward the doorway and called to my operations director. Get it on a live trace. Freeze external document access. Pull every seal usage log for the last 30 days. Nobody deletes anything. That one order changed the room. My mother's performance for the office began to crack. My father stopped watching me and started watching the employees moving outside the conference room. Caleb opened a folder on his phone. The folder names were dates. Some from 3 years ago. Some from the months after I was fired. I started keeping copies after Maya left, Caleb said. Not because I understood everything. I didn't. But vendors kept calling about past due balances I'd never been told existed. Clients asked why promises Maya made weren't in the system anymore. Finance reports changed after meetings. Elaine's voice sharpened. You were overwhelmed, you misunderstood. No, Caleb said, I was unprepared, there's a difference. That landed harder than I expected. For years, I had pictured him sitting behind my old desk, pleased with himself, surrounded by praise he hadn't earned. I had not pictured him drowning under the same mess I had been carrying. Only without anyone admitting the mess existed. He turned the phone slightly so I could see the folder thumbnails. Screenshots, scanned forms, forwarded emails. After you were fired, Caleb said to me, Dad told me I needed to sign clean-up paperwork, vendor updates, board records, training acknowledgements. He said you left things incomplete. My father's voice dropped. You were an officer of the company, you signed ordinary documents. Caleb looked at him, blank ones. The words hit the table like glass breaking. I stared at Caleb, blank. He nodded once. Stacks of them, signature pages, acknowledgement forms. Some had headings, some didn't. I asked what they were for, and Dad said if I wanted the role, I had to trust the process. Elaine turned on him so fast that the air changed. Your sister has poisoned you against your own blood. Caleb gave a humorless laugh. Maya hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. That silenced her for one clean second. Then Lena came back into the room with her laptop open, 2 members of it behind her and security visible near the elevators. We have a preliminary access trail, Lena said. My mother's eyes narrowed. You have no right to involve staff in a private family matter. Lena did not look at her, she looked at me. The company seal template was accessed 2 weeks ago through archived consultant credentials. I knew exactly who she meant before she said the name. Which consultant? I asked. Lena glanced at the screen. Darren Vale. My mother's face did not move. That was how I knew. Darren had worked with us for 6 weeks during our 2nd year, reviewing operations workflows. He was polished, overqualified, and strangely interested in our document control system. I had only hired him because Elaine had called me out of nowhere and said, "He's excellent. Don't punish a good recommendation just because it came from me." At the time, I thought it was her first attempt at peace. Now I understood it had been an opening. Lena continued. Darren's credentials should have been deactivated when his contract ended. Someone used them to retrieve the seal file, then accessed a folder containing old incorporation documents. Richard's voice rose. This is absurd. You're letting employees fabricate accusations because you're angry at your parents. No, I said. I'm letting my company investigate a breach. Security reached the doorway. Elaine pointed at them. Maya removed them. Now this is family. I looked at the stamped transfer agreement, then at Caleb's pale face, then at my father who had gone too still. Not anymore. Caleb swallowed and tapped the oldest dated file on his phone. There's one more thing, he said. This is from the week before you were fired. He turned the screen toward me. Before I could read the first line, Richard lunged across the table. His arm swept hard through the space between us. Caleb jerked back, but not fast enough. The phone flew from his hand and cracked against the floor. The phone hit the carpet with a dull crack. For a second, nobody moved. Then Caleb dropped to one knee and grabbed it before Richard could stamp it out of instinct. The screen flickered, still alive, still sinking. Don't, Richard said sharply. Caleb stood up slowly, holding the phone like it weighed more than glass and metal. I already did, he said. A notification chimed on my laptop. Then Lena's. Then the legal channel we had just opened 5 minutes ago. Files are uploading, Lena said quietly. Elaine's composure finally slipped. Caleb, stop this. He didn't look at her. He looked at me. And pressed send. The room changed immediately after that. Not emotionally. Structurally. Like something inside the building had shifted from private conflict to documented evidence. Lena opened the file first. Her expression tightened as she scanned. Then she turned the screen toward me. 3 years earlier, the Voss strategic supply collapse wasn't accidental. It was structured. Debt layering across subsidiary accounts. Internal transfers disguised as vendor prepayments. Loans approved under inflated projections that never reached operations. Richard's signature appeared on expansion authorizations that never aligned with market demand. Elaine's approvals moved money between accounts to stabilize quarterly reporting, hiding gaps long enough to keep investors calm. And through all of it, one thing stayed consistent. I was the only person closing the operational gaps fast enough to prevent collapse from becoming exposure. My parents didn't just depend on my work. They were being held together by it. And instead of acknowledging that, they decided I knew too much. So they removed me. Then they rebuilt the narrative. Caleb's voice broke the silence. They told me you were unstable, that you were leaving anyway, that I had to step in so the company wouldn't fall apart. I didn't respond, because I was reading the part that mattered most. After I was fired, documents began appearing under Caleb's name that he had never physically signed in full awareness. Blank pages I remembered, now digitally reconstructed with my company seal. And his name, used as authorization, not to help him lead, but to make him legally responsible for decisions he never made. Lena exhaled slowly. This is an attempted transfer of liability. My father finally spoke. You don't understand corporate succession law. I understand forged consent, I said. That shut him down. For the first time, Elaine looked at Caleb without strategy, without control, just assessment. You were supposed to protect this family, she said. Caleb laughed once, sharp and broken. No, I was supposed to sign whatever you put in front of me. Silence again. Then Lena's voice came in, controlled but decisive. Legal is confirming this gives us grounds for immediate civil action. Fraud, coercion, document forgery, unauthorized use of corporate seals, and misrepresentation of ownership rights. She looked at me. Do you want us to file? I didn't answer immediately. Because my parents were still standing there. Not as authority. Not as legacy. Just two people who had walked into my building, expecting me to still be the version of me they could dismiss. My mother tried one last time. This is a family matter, she said. We can resolve this privately. I looked at the folder still on the table. Then at the glass walls of my office. At the employees outside who had built this company with me after I had nothing left. No, I said, you resolved it the moment you fired me in front of them. I turned to Lena. File everything. Elaine stepped forward. Maya. Security moved in before she finished my name. Caleb didn't resist when they guided him aside. But he spoke once quietly to me. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. I nodded once. Not forgiveness. Just acknowledgement. My father tried to speak again, but the words didn't form into anything useful. Elaine was the only one still trying to hold the old version of reality together. It's your family, she said again, voice tightening. You don't destroy your family. I met her eyes. You already did. Security escorted them out through the glass doors. The entire floor watched. No one stopped them. No one followed. When the doors closed, the sound wasn't dramatic. It was final. The fallout didn't happen in one moment. It happened in systems. Legal filings went out that afternoon. Then internal audits. Then external notifications to partners who had unknowingly relied on falsified continuity from the old Voss structure. The consultant, Darren Vale, was identified within hours. He didn't deny access misuse when confronted with logs that showed his credentials used after contract termination. He cooperated immediately when shown the full trail. Investors from the old company pulled out within days once the debt layering and misrepresented reporting became public record. The Voss strategic supply name stopped carrying weight. It started carrying questions, and answers no one wanted attached to it. Elaine and Richard's authority collapsed not through argument, but through documentation that could not be negotiated with. Caleb resigned from everything tied to them 2 weeks later. He didn't ask for anything. Not money. Not credit. Not reconciliation. Just a written statement confirming the blank signature pages and the coercion surrounding them. He gave it. And signed it properly this time. I didn't rebuild the company from the ruins of theirs. It was already separate. It just stopped being threatened. Employees who had watched the conference room that day didn't treat me differently after. They just stopped watching like they were waiting for permission to trust the ground beneath them. Lena stayed. So did the rest of my leadership team. Work resumed. But something fundamental had changed. I didn't need approval to keep building anymore. Weeks later, Caleb showed up at my office without a folder, without a suit, without anyone behind him. Just him. "I'm not here to fix anything," he said. I didn't respond right away. He nodded once, accepting that. Then added, "I just didn't want you to think I stayed silent because I agreed with them." "I didn't," I said. "That was enough. Not repair. Not closure. Just accuracy." He left after that. And I didn't stop him. My parents never came back. They didn't need to. Everything they built had already been stripped of authority in public record. Not through drama. Through verification. Through systems they could no longer influence. My office stayed the same. Glass walls. Clean lines. No family name on the entrance. Only mine. The first contract I ever signed after being fired stayed framed on my desk. Not because I needed to remember what happened, but because it proved what survived it. Outside, the company moved forward without looking backward. Inside, nothing needed to be reclaimed anymore. It was already mined.